Now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from meats which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth, for it is sanctified by the word of God and prayer.
We are the partakers, the partaking. 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 According to the world and its philosophy, all is vain deceit. Don't touch, don't taste, so you refrain from meats. All herbs bearing seed and trees with good fruit. False humility and abstinence, angel worship and root. If you died with Christ from the rudiments of earth, then why as though subject do you live in reverse? The handwritten ordinance only produced a curse, a false appearance of wisdom but not of spiritual worth. Neglect of the body and affliction of soul, a false fast to self-benefit never making you whole. Partakers know better that thanksgiving is king, sanctifying all creatures of God taken within.
Yo, so I'm like thinking about that post I made previously about the tomatoes. I know some people are probably like, ugh, rot tomatoes and whatnot. But now obviously some people did learn some things. So just another updater. Those are still in there. And like you've got a bit more grain going on. And it's quite interesting though. So I was just checking these. It's drying up pretty well. Actually really is. Getting pretty dry. The seeds are like, you know, still at the bottom there and everything. So it's pretty awesome. And I literally, you know, they were right next to. They literally were right next to these two tomatoes that from previous time had actually dried up while they were just like whole and flat, and I'd actually checked one. So I'm just getting it out so I can nicely put it underneath the light. Literally, like, this is literally all ready to go already. Like, even if you were to break it up, and actually let me just do that for the camera for just the one. So it's completely dried. And if you do the thing that most people do, it like, you know whatnot, you'd be like getting the seeds from it. Technically you could roll this up. You literally technically could. It's an interesting part. So there we got a couple of the seeds in between and amongst, as you can see. Are they like really dry inside? It's really awesome, huh? So yeah, while I was mentioning the whole people's actual disgust in their disgust, really it's not anything to do with things, and if you study actually very closely, whatever people perceive might be the source of some of the things they think they're feeding in the flesh. It's always spiritually before it is physically. Which brings me to my next point, really. Like, okay, check this out. I think y'all know this drink. A lot of people call them ginger beers. Stony ginger beer. What? Are you kidding me? But it's sweet and they add sugar. Interesting. What some people call this. What an interesting flavor. What a very interesting flavor. And they make it from hops, wheat, and maize. You know what's funny about the maize part there? Is it gets super awesome when you nicely look at the actual truth of things. Because you'd be like, the actual flavor for that is quite interesting in comparison. One's ginger, the name beer. The other one is made of wheat and corn. This is also made of corn and wheat. Now, the end of the last video, I did look at the Nando's peri-peri sauce, and I was trying to get people to understand, okay, it does not burn. Like, that's the issue with those, right there. It's past 8 p.m., and we all know that vinegar is past wine after grape juice. So just looking at this, it's like, wow, someone is as inspired to put vinegar in it. Sunflower seed, oil, spices, African bird's eye chili, paprika, mustard, turmeric, ginger, cumin, onion, puree, tomato paste, salt, garlic, puree as well, acidity regulators. Those words are not supposed to be deceiving. So you'd be like, well, that word there, peri, peri. Supposedly for something that burns, we don't want to take that for granted. Like, for real though. It was funny how people would talk a lot, literally mentioning this drink. This one escaped the onslaught of nonsense, right? Well, I'm talking about the burn factor here. Because this one started with the onslaught, and I'm not playing chess by pulling that forward like that. The 40% that people always mention and never think about the other 60%, it's like, wow, that's a bit deceptive. Technically, you would want to think they were thinking 40% bitter flavored and then at least 60% water and something else. But no, like in the past, this is 2024. In about 2014, 2015, there was a little bottled drink, about the same size bottle, called Ballistics, which was, well, these manufacturing started happening across the border before they came into Zim locally, if you will. The brewery was kind of shared as a knowledgeable way of at least manufacturing things at home. Technically, how the Jatropha diesel and petrol infusion of people actually investing in such a thing happened. But this took a little bit of a longer time due to the exact stigmas that I'm pointing out right now, which is why I kept mentioning the part where people will be like, oh, this kombucha, right? It's a traditionally labeled drink, right? Because it's got ginger in it. What else? It's got black pepper, tea, sugar, and water, generally. Otherwise, there's other things that are like spices and, you know, just to like make it flavorful. And you're like, okay. So in the quote-unquote name of man-made tradition and customs, people took that as more of an acceptance to chop, quick it up. The Jatropha thing was a bit more of a Babylonian political construct, which was in the face of all humanity and community easily overcome, and very inventive and very, what can I say, implementive against the manipulation that people were dealing with, was something to use and actually invest in. But this right here, right there, just looking at that part there, about the 40% thing, it's the same with all of them. And these labels, if you did not know, that's why I'm like being realistic, are put there by quote-unquote regulation, if you will. They are not always necessarily true. In fact, it is literally the same as what pointed out here, as the actual story of this sticker never used to say danger, smoking is harmful to health. It used to say danger, smoking may cause cancer. That had to be changed because they could not prove it. Facts. And for 100 years, if you know the most of the original labeled cigarettes, before there was anything like this, there was no such labeling. People would just literally roll them with machines and they'd just be random, like labelless. Basically, either people rolled them by hand, or when it started being packaged, it was just an extra token of appreciation for a gift given after a service or something. Even when people would board planes, and there was no such thing as no smoking on planes. The cancer epidemic, as we've just gone through the quote-unquote corona epidemic, right? When those things roll out spiritually, manifest in the face of the earth, that is when they tried to quote-unquote claim that they were trying to find the source of it. This was very widely popular, even amongst children. People won't want to believe that, but at the stage that we are now, I think factual basis is sometimes something people need to go by. So all of a sudden there's statistic time, and okay, the majority of people that do this or the majority of people that do that, they ended up sticking the danger smoking causes cancer. Unfortunately, they could not prove it, and the tobacco industry was now booming and growing. So by the time that happened, they had to find all sorts of other statistics that were generally about the same. In fact, before that, by the way, plastic cups and utensils, you should know, before things were sold in bottles, there wasn't really a way to vesselize things for them to be like consumer market wise, right? So when this came around, this was standard for your plates, your cups, almost your forks and stuff, besides those being metal, right? So when this little sweet stuff here called plastic ended up coming up, and it was more natural than the glass way for people to think, well, it's lighter, it takes less space, it's quicker to make in bulk, and it's quote unquote cheaper. That became more of a standard. But now the same sort of politic here applied. And I tell this story every single time, because when they wanted to replace general glass packaging, and this means bowls and stuff, everything for food and whatnot, if there was no plastic bag or paper bag takeaways then for everything, your milk deliveries in neighborhoods and whatnot, that's when they started implementing the invented plastic. They started saying plastic utensils, which means bottles and drinks as well. You see, this is still today being used. Okay, fine. Yeah, look at that. Plastic utensils, forks, cups, plates, spoons, you name it, cause cancer. That was the second on top of people's just general, oh no, it's just smoking that causes. No, okay, let's do a proper recap. Okay, that's not the only thing now. I do not have a can of beans with me right now to show you how it's been, but honestly, processed foods and such were also now on the outroll of becoming just generally a household item and very frequently sold in shops and supermarkets. Seriously, literally the same stuff that you're seeing at the back here, where it says acidity regulators, lactic acid, lactic stabilizers, those very things, dehydrated green pepper, emulsifier, that's another one. And what else is there? Anything else there? Anyway, point made. Those were now told to be causes of cancer based on the processed pork, beef, and chicken. Really was pointing towards anything canned or preserved, because they called them new synthetic preservatives. They weren't all natural. It wasn't, oh, you take your pepper and you just ground it up, like that. Okay, you might add a liquid to it, you might heat it up, you might cool it, you might refrigerate it, come back and defrost it, then cool it again, and then extract something from it, and that might preserve things a bit longer, it being a different kind of salt. There's not only one kind of salt, there are many. In fact, bleach is also a salt, but we'll get to that later, and I think you'll be glad that I said that. So, in conjunction with is harmful to the plastic, as well as processed pork, beef, and chicken, which meant tinned or canned food preservatives of what you just saw, literally being the antioxidant, acidic regulators, emulsifiers, and stuff like that. Those are names given to them because the category, and if you look at the names, it's very categorically confused in terms of, well, the titling method. You'd actually, that's kind of some things named by calculus, not named by the way they taste. That's where I'm going with the overall of where I started. I was like, ooh, what? Ginger beer? Really? Ginger? Okay, they did add sugar to it, but what do they call this? Ooh, they call that a beer too. Oh, interesting. Don't have a sweet one here right now, but there's something sweet in here already. But it's just because of the name that you'd be thinking otherwise and need to get something sweet else. Anyway, so, literally, that's 3 things we've covered. The next 4th one is where I always tell people, keep your eye on the birdie when they talk about treatment of quote-unquote cancer. Radiation time, right? cell phones began to be rolled out, television screens actually were said to be emitting a very amount of not large but effective radiation from the cathode ray oscilloscope tubes that were used for general TVs. They used to say that radiation causes cancer. By the time cell phones were there, don't sleep with your phone in your breast pocket, or don't walk around with it like that, or don't sleep with your phone under your pillow. You might get brain cancer, breast cancer for women. General quote-unquote danger warning signs. And you have your 5G phone right now, and you do not need to even think, what did they say about 5G causing corona? Really, is that knowledgeability based on any wisdom from above, or is it from wisdom from below with lots and lots of knowledge? As I'm trying to just, get to the point quickly. So, plastic spoons, forks, plates, and knives were said to cause cancer. Processed pork, beef, and chicken, food preservatives from canned stuff were said to cause cancer. They were trying to claim at some point, because this has another thing to do with taxation. Be honest about it. It had nothing to do with that causing anything. It's just a plant that you can grow very much anywhere, even in your backyard. It's just probably not there due to deforestation by mankind and whatnot, so that they can civilize or civilianate areas or whatnot. The other one, before I get to the radiation and topping it all off with the stick your eye on the birdie, or keep it on the birdie, is the non-sticky pan coatings. If you want to go to any place that they sell pants and things like leather-based, things that have, it's almost Kevlar, but it's like Kevlar on a basis of coating for cooking or low applied heat instead of velocity. That's literally what non-sticky pan coating is, but that's not the point. The point is they started saying that causes cancer, and everything literally has non-sticky pan coating on it. Pots, pans, things made from microwavable. It depends if you're using oil or whatnot, but the general is just now to cover for everything, right? They used to say that causes cancer. Now that's standard. And why I'm noting that one is standard is literally because you'll kind of think about, okay, so how does that come across as man's wisdom, and how many things are still sold as plastic? But they actually said that actually happens. This is like so biblical. It's 1 Timothy 4, Matthew 15. The historical points that most people would try to overlook, even when they just try and teach other people of it. So the point I'm getting to is that, well, they said radiation causes cancer. Then they started treating it with cancer. If you know what radiotherapy is, you shouldn't be shocked to understand as much there. Well, that's quite interesting. So they went from, cell phone radiation causes it, and whatnot, and then they're treating with it, and they're getting results. Oh, interesting, but not 100%, but at least we know one thing about 1 Timothy chapter 4. Right? We do know that it says everything God created is good. 2, the conjunction with 1 Corinthians chapter 11, the full section being chapter 8 to 11. This is food sacrificed to idols, temples of principle. For as far as I can remember, people's misconception of them being actually abstinent idols, this is not true. They're actually indulgent idols. People thinking them to be indulgent idols, them actually being abstinent idols. The inverse of how the world thinks, literally. Them saying, oh, do you eat too much of this salt-wise? Calling it high blood pressure is a reaction. No, it just happens that the person was eating a lot of salt, or whatever amount they were. They might not even have been, and they just might end up thinking they were, because of a spiritual attack and them going to the wrong wisdom to quote unquote see what's going on with their physical body. At that point of understanding, well, it's interesting how the actual little biscuits, and why I just generally call them bitter biscuits, right? Tiny little ones, just like the sugar tablet capsules that they make for supplement sugars, when they end up saying that you have high blood, diabetes because of too much sugar. They are also salt derivatives. They are literally those synthetic made salts. Just claims that you've eaten too much salt so you can get sold fabricated salt, or just other kinds of manufactured salt. Same thing with the diabetes that I'm talking about. Some people who did not have enough money for treatment when it came to diabetes, insulin is made by mold. by the way, for some of the people who didn't understand that much, where they actually get a lot of things. Why I mentioned in the last video about maggots being harvested and things. Yeah, no, they make some many things from that, actually, stuff that's in your shampoos and a whole bunch of other things. But they're now sugar-wise, right? They would say that insulin is technically derived from very fermented states. Extracted, if you will, still fermented. I mean, this is now a flavor thing. Why I mentioned the titling, labeling, the calling of and naming of things not having really too much to do with the things themselves, kind of like the calculus of the process. It's kind of like if you have chicken, right? You get a chicken, you end up slaughtering it, and then you're like, okay, so the chicken breast takes 2 minutes to cook halfway through. Then you get a pigeon bird, and you check out the pigeon bird's breast, and then you see, okay, this one cooks really fast through. So you end up calling the pigeon breast fast cook or something like that. Literally, that's kind of I'm just giving a vague example of how you get to words like emulsifiers, acidity regulators. Acidity is actually a flavor. Sour should make sense to some people. That is why that 1 Timothy 4 collage is very specific with the battery acid and the sweet and sour gummy bear packets. If you do know, like, that's how much God doesn't appreciate people doing that to kids. And if you were born in 86 or before, you would actually realize, like, well, either you're on that side or on that side of the understanding. Literally, acidity actually just means sour. Even if it foams up and whatnot, okay, things that have flavors react with other things that have flavors. In fact, barbecue flavored anything starts with sugar and salt. The rest is just, like you saw, paprika, pepper this, garlic, and all sorts of things, tomato puree, ginger puree, and whatnot, and all that stuff, right? These are just general facts of life. Why I'm like, just looking at the names here, you're like, oh, ginger beer, interesting. Carling Black Label beer, wow. In that one, they'll be like, wow, you want to drink, right? Soda, soft drink. It's good to drink and not drunk. And these flavors, wonder what they are. Why I mention of that 40%. It's that serious. Like, actually, even the vapor that comes from there when you do light up the dried leaf is quite an interesting. Why also, like, the actual flavor ball inside in that is very. So sometimes I just keep going back to holify everything for some people that may not have even gotten the first round of any of these things. Other people are used to this for years now. But, oh, no, Tech's going to bring up the history of cancer, cigarettes. He's going to talk about non-sticky pans, processed pork, beef, and chicken. And he's going to talk about cell phone radiation. And then it's like, well, yeah, The more we look around, and why I mentioned that kombucha drink, because that was this is a recent development of last year. I've never heard anybody talk about that like that. I was like, wow, this drink came out in 2001. People loved it. It was just a drink to them. Basically like Stony ginger beer. This is a fizzy one. It's locally made. Interesting. Stony being a part of the Coca-Cola company or was bought out at some point in time. But the point, and this is during a point of the soda water-ish era, some people don't even know that history of carbonated just water. Like just that being a part of how we get to the actual barley and hops, wheat, fizzy bitter drinks. Fizzy bitter drinks and the fizzy sweet ones. Yeah, it's quite interesting. So, apart from people's general mention, yeah, the kombucha is a very significant one. You're like, wow, okay, well, 2021, it's a drink. It's a ginger-based tea, pepper, sugar, and water generally. 2022 comes around and people are saying, oh, it heals. And you're like, okay. You kind of like don't take note of it. And then 2023 comes through and people are like, it gets you drunk. What? You're like, really? Ginger, sugar, tea, black pepper, and water get you what? Seriously? You're like, wow, really? That flavor? No. Are you sure you're still not like into like multiple husbands and like sleeping around? Are you sure you're not into like the mindset of you think it's all right to lie, you think it's normal, you think it's acceptable, it's just like that's how everybody is, or everybody's is promiscuous, or everybody's a murderer or a thief or harmful person? Really. The flavor of black pepper, tea, ginger, sugar, water. I was like, Either somebody gotta wake up or somebody gonna go to sleep. That's 1 Corinthians 11, verse 30. For not discerning the Lord's body. That it seems foolish to some people because I'll just eat things how I want to eat them and drink them and say, okay, cool. But when something's good, just don't call it bad. I mean, you'd be the only person individually who's going to take the rap for it. We're talking about God here, and he's self-same indwelling. Whether people care to or don't care to take note of that, it's literally the thing. Why the flavors and such, I'm like, yeah, no, seriously, that bad. That being 40% issues of politic. Oh, it's brown. These are both said to be 40%. I wonder what the difference is. Oh, well, look at this one. It's a little bit more honest, quote unquote. Now, that sticker could just be upgraded with a bit more information. Purified water, extra neutral alcohol, the hated ethanol that people just, it's just when you get to a very, very base of it, the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, just a few other things, but bitter flavor being it, and whiskey flavor. That's basically more history that people won't care to look at. What would we call whiskey flavor? Well, technically you're emulating the flavor of something that's been kept in a barrel, either wooden or semi-wooden or just very old wood and been used over and over. I think wine barrels are generally the most known before people started distilling to a point where it was whiskeys and what they call cane spirits and such like that, or quote-unquote ethanol. There's a lot of names for it, but people just having beef with the one title, ethanol. It's very stupid because methanol is there, and there's methylated spirits, and it's literally what people dab their injection after post drinkings with funny, glorified straws that are actually harmful. What they dab on it for it to heal up. And then say that, oh, I just drank something or ate something or got medicated by someone. If we even said that they were medicating themselves in that way, it would now become heroin issues or levels. Strange, again, how people can't see that. It's that serious. It's that serious. And, on that level of thinking, now you'd be like, well, okay. So even the denial of just the word pharmacy and drugstore. You'd be wondering what somebody's having a war on. Right, so right back to the ginger beer. It had really covered the flavor. It's like there's something it's not supposed to seem as if it's secret, and it's not. The history of the cigarettes and smoking pot, we should have covered that enough for people to have understood that vapor is vapor, whether the thing that they're looking at is a color or a flavor base. That's why I'm getting to the bottom of it for the most of just generally for most people. I'm beginning to realize that's how superstitious people are. No, seriously, just deeming that alcohol gets people drunk is superstitious. Whether you like to believe it or not, you may have a PhD in superstition. That does not validate the truth. It does not in any way. I didn't focus on the treating of cancers by radiation, but that's another thing to cover even for the corona era, and it's quite interesting having the use of methylated spirits, by the way, as a prevention cause. And when I say prevention cause, it's literally, that paranoia and doctrine teaching part. So, superstition that it burns. Literally, when people do that, you don't want to have to lie to yourself that someone went on purpose afterwards, it actually felt anyway. No. One, people's discernment of being in the spirit and truth of things. Two, being in the fleshly conscience and otherwise. When the spirit and flesh are not at war or are not lusting against each other and they are in unison, that's a good thing. That should be considered, especially when it comes to teaching and doctrine, because the fleshly conscience technically should be the filterable stage of where we can filter out all the nonsense that people teach the lies about fleshly conscience with, and the spirit and truth where we stand with the self-same indwelling spirit of our Heavenly Father. But then, I'm saying, about that bitterness part, and it is literally bitter flavored drinking. just from people's heard somebody else. And why I mentioned that ballistic drink. Oh, I didn't like literally immediately afterwards mention what people were claiming or experiencing from it, whether true or not. And I've never seen anybody do that, but I've seen the resultant of when you're not in spirit and truth. And it actually has to do with sexual immorality, lying, stealing, harmfulness, and being, and even mortality, adverse being. Like, honestly, that is a serious part. Piri or hot sauce or chili, what they call chili, people should revise the meanings of. The names and titles don't have to change, but what people make of them. Just because somebody sees these two words and then thinks it burns is literally the same about when somebody sees those and thinks it burns, or somebody sees that word and thinks drunk, but sees the word there too, does not think drunk, knows that this is in the same flavor category, made of the same with the carling, but does not consider it as such. Please don't call me a brute for this, but it can get brutal for people who just do not want to admit the truth. We don't like to give in, but warning the unruly ends up being a point where, look, you know, some of these knowledges are so in your face and so easily accessible. So I'm looking for the ingredients here for the specific one. Directions, caution. And let me look off the camera for a second. Yeah, it's right there at the top. Alcohol, denant, butane, propane. Is it isobutane, parfum? And that's what I'm saying. You know, the amount of things that'll have different names, there's a lot of this in there, and in there, and in all of these. This is a fact. How would you think that expresses itself across your conscience? Just in case every time you smell this, just because it doesn't smell like that, you end up calling it harmful, right? But now you're either one of those people who may have had a spouse that enjoys this or this kind, and just because their breath smells that way, it's not in the category of goodness like that. But you see what I'm saying? These are the actual hypocrisies some people don't note. And if garlic breath is an issue for some people, that doesn't make sense. It's like, honestly, it's like being upset because someone has a rice breath. You'd be like, okay, so if someone is to brush their teeth because of that, there's some rice in there, it's pretty white. It's a fact. Like, okay, technically, I'm done on that note of the video. And I would hope that you are glad that I said all that instead of like being annoyed or shocked or alarmed. But these are actual facts of all the way. Because those are those kind of substances, quote unquote substances. And where we went all the way with that tomato visual discovery is like, okay, well, that's part of reality here as well. Interesting how when it dries up, it's quite one of those things. Oh, I do have tomatoes now, by the way, just not in the fridge. So I think it's best to like just orient ourselves in the spirit and truth. Obviously, sound doctrine has more of a weightier matter than anything to do lawfully, or what can I say? Well, the perfect law of liberty is totally and extremely sorted out, just in the knowledgeability. For some people, it's just because they don't know. For some people, they do know, but the way they've been taught to know about certain parts and passive things, it's like some things are sticking out this way, other things are sticking out that way, and it looks like they're saying different things about themselves, the things of it, but like that fact should stick out as a sore thumb. The base elements of alcohol, oil, and sugar, this being something sweet, being carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Base ones. So everything, and in this effect of life, everything has a little bit of everything else in it, regardless of what it is. That everybody should just agree. Alcohol, oil. Like whoever's going to get away, without cooking with oil, well, okay, maybe you might boil stuff, use water. But we just said, again, base element is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Apparently water is H2O, dihydrogen oxide. Quite interesting, innit? So, yeah, for that, I'm done. It did take 30 minutes. There's a bit more of maybe some breakdowns to give them, from each and every, example given. The plastic cups, plates, and utensils stage of things actually being quote-unquote just suppressed or taxed because it's very high productivity of being able to make the things. It is actually, I'm just trying to find one now, quite serious when it comes to the non-sticky pan side of things. Because even if you look at the general non-sticky pan that people are using, this is an old version of. Here's a pan that has the old version of the kind of non-sticky. Now technically it's a coated layering, where generally the kinds of pots that people are used to today, I'm sure those are some stains and whatnot, but it's literally galvanized into the metal instead of being coated on the actual thing, where at a point in time you could actually scratch it off, or some people would complain about it wearing and tearing and whatnot. It actually also having elements of plasticism. I think that was a word quite some time ago, but as of late, some people just kind of need to just get the histories if they want to. It's informational. So I'm gonna leave the video there. Again, give the whole family of things that's on the table right now a big awesome, guys. Catch y'all later. Oh, and for those couple of people who seem to always get to that point of, ooh, I need to stop smoking and drinking just so I can A, B, and C and whatnot. By all means, you can if you want to, but it's not going to guarantee any effect on your actual learnedness and understanding of experience. For one myself, I remember when I first got into the Word of God in spirit and truth, God actually told me, dude, you don't have to do that. I basically did it on my own behalf. I didn't stop smoking cigarettes, but I stopped smoking weed and drinking. Oh, and actually, truthfully, because my dad also used to have his alcohol once in a while. It wasn't really a complete stop or whatnot, but I'm just saying, about a month period did not help at all. The conscience part, why I mentioned, as stated, those people that you would keep around, or they would keep you around because of entertaining lies. You not being a lying person, you not wanting to believe them, but your continual subconscious being interact based on, because people are smoking, they must be thinking of sexual immorality. Well, whether they're smoking or not is going to be what it is. Drunkenness, multiple husbandry. You can only eat rice, pork, beef, and chicken and wheat-based food and not drink alcohol, quote unquote, right? You're still drunk if you think multiple husbandry and multiple sexual partners and sexual immorality is normal. Chatting up literally every single person of the opposite sex? Really? No. It's drunkenness. Oh, so it's okay to lie to people. Or if somebody puts their phone down next to me and they get up and go to the toilet, and if I take it and they don't see it, and it's loud, drunk. Still not drinking and eating, right? Drunk. Oh, it's okay to devise plans and do things that affect other people's lives in the dark of their awareness or doesn't matter if you're eating or drinking or not, smoking or drinking or not, drunk. I'll just focus on the sexual immorality part, because in life we don't have anything else except men and women, young or old, from baby stage to grownness. Always growing and always learning. That one lesson, not enough people learn quickly and immediately because they have fallbacks. They have abstinent fallbacks. The devil tries to set these up all over the place. And one of the most susceptible places is in institutionalized gatherings, where they usually is an understatement of a word. They regulatorily have people not eat and drink everything at any such place, calling that the world of principle doctrines. Though on God's green earth and the face of the earth worldwide, everything that God made is good. You find that exercised across the board in the very mentioned. It's ridiculous. Just look at the couple of things that we've gone through. Ginger beer, actual beer, and the word that I had already mentioned while doing it through the whole thing, flavor. Literal taste and flavor. Smell if you want. There's a nasal palate. Interesting how the two interact. To call them a two is quite interesting again, but you'd have to rewrite a couple of understandings for anybody to even make sense of that. Even how, like, dripping liquids down your nose is so good for you. None of the bitter liquids dripping down your nose is so good for you. You notice that your nasal palate also goes into your mouth palate. So breathing like, and you see now, just explaining that with other people's conscience didn't go well. And have a correlation. Actually can both be done through the mouth and the nose, but then who's taught what, when and where, that's another issue. Except people now actually understanding the spirit and truth, reality of things. Well, I gather at a point in time they would have needed to make nasal sprays and Vicks Vapor Rub and whatnot, and then now all of a sudden there's a double back to smell therapy is a technical word, but people actually using that as a healing method. Some of the char fried popcorn I'm having right now is quite mindful and remindful when people end up trying to totalitarianize in the wrong way. That when something burns or something, just because it leaves char or ashes behind, that as if it has no flavor or taste. Well, grill and barbecue on some pine wood, dried or not. You can taste it after if you want to, and then try the same on whichever other, maybe oak or something. It should make sense why every time anybody's ever, like, quote unquote burned the food on the stove, you can still smell the food in it. Or even if, like, the chicken was cooked past brown into the blackishness, where still smells like chicken. What is it that people actually enjoy so much about barbecues and open flame grills, actually? So I'll catch you guys later. Like I said there, I just had to literally make that one more video on top of the Rotten Tomatoes one, because it's a fact. And facts. Faith facts, in fact. Sorry again, and one more. Oh, the people I was talking about, who you would have spent so much time with. No, I'll just, like, give my own testimony at the point in time of, I've been in the 1 Timothy 4 and Matthew 15 for too long to have been deceived, but most people would have perceived to themselves as if, no, just because you're still hanging with those kind of people, that you're thinking the way they are. No, not at all. In fact, the whole entire past is 2014, 13 years at least. For the most of anybody's dishonesty and discernment of their own thinking, that I just automatically believed their lies just because I was spending time with them or in any personal vicinity, that is literally their own fish to fry. And I mean, whether it was sleepovers, whether it was studio sessions, whether it was still be partaking, eating and drinking, whatnot. But those people are, like I'm saying, you have to discern ongoingly. And it takes some time at that point, which also includes experience. Some people might take advantage of that exact point too. But God is not a fool to let nonsense of evil that would be trying to come against us by itself derail us from the path that he has oriented. That's another part most people don't think. Usually the only reason they want to try and stop smoking or drinking is because they want to look good to other people's eyes. That's not the point. Okay, if you're very avid about wanting to remain sober, know that you actually already are. The doctrine and teaching and experiential part of it, it's more your own self and indwelling experience with the Father's being. The part that has to do with other people, well, when you've noted somebody is a certain way that is opposite from being oneness of flesh, understanding and eternally oriented, take note of that. By all means, if they change, that'll be awesome and great. And redemption, and for people to come to the knowledge of the truth, is what we want as Spirit and Truth Christians. But other people may be thinking otherwise and still try to use even just that knowledge that we are Spirit and Truth Christians, quote unquote, against us. But like I'm saying, it does not mean that you believe somebody's lies just because you're standing next to them. At the same time, if they're on their path to go and lie to somebody, that's not something you want to help them do, quote unquote, or that be anything of your doing or deed. It'd be awesome if you could also warn the person in ETC or whatnot, but those are just like general, specific ideas of things that go on every day, and everybody's life is singularly different amongst Spirit and Truth wide community. So peace for real this time.
Now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from meats, which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth. The Gospel according to John, chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and ye say, He hath a devil. The Son of Man is come, eating and drinking, and ye say, Behold, a gluttonous man, and a wine-bibber, and a friend of publicans and sinners. But wisdom is justified of all her children. And one of the Pharisees desired him, that he would eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house, and sat down to meat.
7 seasonal seasons, the earth's manifest genesis, and light of salt, being a soul we seasoned with happiness and thanksgiving, serious joy in even the animals, knowing their food, like the plants growing even cabbages. Chickens like oranges, walking, seeing and foraging, pears and apples between birds and fishes of water's origin. Grounded our cattle and beef with crawling and creeps, without the offer keeps our Pharisees blind and fussy as peeps, maybe singular. Thus one-eyed and furthest finicky, is for I see 1 Timothy 4's I've cited particulars. The one ID to identify if to mainframe in heaven's database is the man-made doctrine and registered. We maintain it, never the world's favorite. Reproach a sign that we give as the Lord gave it. The genes Conley and Judy, the most famous kind of one book, wondering cows of the world sacred. One line quotas, Ephesians 5:18, cap and blasphemy offer continuitize fragrance. 19, 20, 21 submission, sending fish mail with castanets like broken chain emails ending. Empty from E without the body. bottom line letter in full. Gassed up with no tank top in the pool. Pisa towers tend to linger. Add the E to the hang around, leaning of Victoria's Secret L's in the winter. Think of the letter E and F in beginner. Bring her up with bottom line. Double ups are broken for winners. Leaving the L driving, taking plate in the learning. Partaking food for thought, knowing drink don't make you a sinner. The world's pollen and politicking. It smells fragranting. Nasal fears a phantom sensation inhale. Like ice raining, signifying Christ raining. Cold shoulders dropping boulders, sublime and vapors escaping directly from solid to gas, but bubbles in water, not a riddle. CO2 in solid state, the smoke settles. 777 up the carbonated, sweet, sour, and bitter. Signs of the times, a taste forever. We'll always remember on earth as heaven and promise. Now as we witness awakenings from dust into righteousness that's amidst us. Kingdom within in the firmament of unition. Weapons of mass construction, God's image, our ammunition. His random access memory overflowing the thickets with his merciful desires despite the darts of the wicked. Thistle or missiles from Sam's sights were still at hand. Armageddon it on in his word out the Peter Pan. Descending blankets of fire, napalming of the lamb. They can't cancel our warfare by a Neverland. Pix Armageddon, Euphrates went Warner Brothers. That's a dry joke to Teletub evangelists from river runners. Left out the Disney from landing punches in silence. Room poaching elephants, OAU and meeting is violence. Mouse on end between my sight, stomping grounds to men sacred cows. It's not beef with the tree trunk strippers to shine. There's no beach sand current could pay the Ivory Coast. See the Cote d'Ivoire ways and boondocks, the hue and the minus. No yellow bone throne game, golden to blend, retrieving hunters gone dry from gin, rummy to sinus. You knows those who oppose ethical roll-on flow, smooth up the ethanol, mint wearing designers. As if even Adam tried sowing clovers for lucky strikes, home base running pitches, underhanding for the diamonds. That softball still hard and larger to hit. Tree of knowledge out the park, clear as people are to admit. Giving life amongst people is good and harming is evil. Killing animals for food needs fires, knowledge to eat still. If you were able to fathom why Jesus came in the first place, you can't coat the truth. When sacrifice means what sacrifice means to offer thanksgiving, eating and drinking the earth's fruit. The midst of the garden on earth, the kingdom within it, all times giving thanks for the fruit and vine from the root. With nothing else made in the image that man was made in, living things and animals given the scoop. The physical snake and joy like Eve, you're gonna eat us soon. As Adam gets instruction on how to prepare us. The devil in the spirit posing question to what God told her husband and herself about life and death and awareness. Then out of her excitement and seeing it good for food, the knowledge and totalitarianism doesn't compute to separate the voice of the fallen devil at play from the subtle snake Adam and herself and what she would do. One thing straight up, animals know the truth and their purpose from conceptive creation made for our use. We were given smart food way before the smartphone or chariots, even running on firmament fire too. From smartwatch to texture sensitive spoons, self-lifting forks and compressed electroradionetic rooms. How high can you go? Some saying wisdom and question our Father in heaven's affirming keeps us up in the blue. Breathe life. What we do? Sheep, right? 1 and 2. Step by step and wholeness of being alive. Coming through. Something's cooking. Gauge, right? If you thinking radio act, microwave them out the box and the son of God in the track. Like it's CDR or VCR, but database with transport and you can see me charge. Energized. In what capacity your medium of record? On or off, 1 or 0 extra copy on a second. Backwards photocopycats are looking skinny, only kill a cat to eat it. No Isaiah 66:3. You think it's minor 49er making diamonds more than major for the paper over people it should cater to? Base running with Homer Simpson and Maggie on the roof and mine sipping OJ while Bart's in the treehouse might just have you smithering Atom smashing accelerating particles and wine 3D printing a victory. Flippies in lap of the father's general corporal if it's punishment to drink bitter juices that turn to vinegar. While baby Nanos quarter chickens will agree the Colonel Sandy fried chicken and spice dust is irregular. Snuffing the sour power powder making sherbets dip sticking to orders found obedience and liberty. Bobbing for last apples at bottoms ain't for perverts when Adam's throat is the deepest kick Jesus bucket of chivalry. Ladies first to men first we same time and no political debate becomes any base of dividing. The devil just trying to conquer with loin politics attaching to the womb any food or drinking beside it. Birth to God if addiction was umbilical grounds of arguments fed without choosing would they resist it? The world's thinking of stomach turning to sackcloth that ashes what life and liberty's joy and fullness surpasses. Biblical standard is granted before but take no mistaken food on a plate in your hands or table for masses. To add the oil from oil and Jesus between and our Father's witness within after M a cup of molasses with mug and bean on the streets, the tree of life in the midst and leaves for healing 12 fruits in each of their season. Think of their seasons ceramics of boiled water from below to those above and the fragrant vapors for breathing.
And be not drunk with wine, wherein is excess, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord, giving thanks always for all things unto God and the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ.
I beat the science school of the fishes biting for melodies. No drunken love debaucher of fate and sober forever. Could've been an icon, Z iron, and can you diet, not depending on the pen. Silly window positive spying on me, peeping face with times of fake friends, trying to reel in fakeness of cakeness, fat and outrageous in layers to the eyes disguises the slices. If I'm trying to onionize the self-hatred, could've been bar starving Marvin Gaye, Barry White, and bacon club soda, base and liquid leaving such a sea carbonated inflated bubbles run over. But I got bread of life and I'm feasting. God still on me, fam, there's no beasting. When they shout on your marks for that race, we got the heavenly crown that's 3 seeding, 3 sieving, many 3 cleaving, some are 3 peating, others 3 seating. If you dehydrate thrice of the THC and 3 lines will find you competing. We're complementing complementation of a race for the pace of Christ we're all leading. Our condescending is condescending, strengthening the weak, remainder conceding. This is the gospel right of eternal life. We partake of liberty's healing. Conscience judged by no other but God, and humility of Christ and we he keeps feeding. No more hunger thirst, we're everlastingly fed, overflowing with others in each season. What's out of season but in receiving, yet to be seasoning others and keep seeding. Now that's interceding, fruit that bears fruit within the more seeding. Seek to believe within dwelling faith of our heavenly Father, his kingdom entreating. Some are treating the pools of chlorine and pH as a test when they blew it to swim. Sinking in skin when you think of the deep end of skywalking stars, and daytime will begin to dawn every morning. From night where it's claimed that the moon and the tides are in synchronous, when the firmament's turning of cables concerning the waters below and the drowning of men. Pt.2 book 3 of Jonathan, thinking of David's epistle with him, what some call Pauline in the gospel of today. Sound doctrine in detail of where to begin. Timmy's not timid, reproach but rebuke to the ways that stir up with the winds. It's just the itching, hysteria, ditching of inward with residence in.